My apologies to those people that I'm going to upset right now, but software developers, we need to have a chat about unnecessary complexity. And unnecessary complexity is what we create. We software developers create when we're in a hurry and we take software and we bolt something else on top and something else on top haphazardly until eventually we have this crazy mess that's a nightmare to maintain and a pain for other people, and hours of productivity just goes in smoke. It's the reason why the sound quality in this video is bad, and this video nearly didn't happen because the Windows camera app suddenly couldn't use my webcam. For reasons I don't know. Logitech G Hub wouldn't start for me. For reasons I still don't know, and all I can do is shrug my shoulders at software. As hours of my time evaporate into thin air, where a simple task, recording a video, turns into a nightmare. So yes, as I say, the software I'm using to record now, for some reason, the audio is not very good, and there are no settings to be found in order to change it. I suppose this is one situation where maybe there's not enough complexity. It's not configurable enough. Anyway, the incident that actually triggered this run happened last week, where I added a new static library to ZTFTP server to extend its capabilities. I created a static link library for it using the AR tool, GCC's AR tool, the archive tool. And then I got the missing symbols linker error on final linking. What's going on, right? Is it reading the archive from the wrong place? Did I make the archive incorrectly? It doesn't look like it. To cut a long story short, after searching on the internet for a while, looking at has anybody else had this problem, eventually I stumbled on a website that said if you use link time optimization, which is something that I had enabled not too long ago, then you need to use GCC-AR to create your static library instead of AR. What? Who thought that one up? Why just because I'm using link time optimization does suddenly the standard tool for creating these static libraries not work mysteriously with like missing symbols, and you need to use GCC-AR, which I didn't even know existed. Right? Now, sure enough, when I switched, it worked fine. And I'm sure there's somebody out there with a rational explanation for why this was done and some kind of justification. I don't want to hear it. From a user's perspective, and this is a developer user, but a user none the same, you took what was a simple task, taking a bunch of files, turning them into a static link library so that you can link it in, and made it complicated and poorly documented, by the way. I had no idea that GCC-AR existed. And just like that, what should have taken a few minutes, an hour of my time later, I finally figured it out. And it's not by no means the first time I've hit this kind of unnecessary complexity. With ZTFTP, OpenSSL was a nightmare to use. You would think, okay, so you've got an encryption, decryption library for the secure socket layer. All you need to do is to pipe the raw data in for encryption and send the encrypted data out on the internet and do the reverse on the way out. Right? How complicated can it be? But no, OpenSSL's API is ridiculously complicated and hard to use. Now, this is something I think they may be working on to improve. But in the meantime, it's like what should have been a simple task turned into a very complicated one that involved scouring all over the internet for example code on how to do what it was that I wanted to do. And what happens is we end up with fragile software as well. For example, why did the camera app suddenly stop being able to use my webcam? Right? Fragile software that does these weird things that are hard to debug, and it makes the life of software developers horrible. Like doing our jobs can be a real pain when what should be simple suddenly turns into this nightmarish marathon. Even today, a contractor I'm working with told me reading the SD card from the phone instead of the built-in flash drive is unnecessarily complicated. It sounds like it should be easy. Just read from this SD card instead of this one, right? But for some reason, it's not straightforward to do. And as a result, it takes extra work. Because it's complex like that, more likely to have bugs, more likely to fail, and these things add up quickly to frustrating time waste. So now realize that it's easy to complain about it. It's not so easy to do something about. Right? Now, obviously, if somebody else has made a complex mess that you have to use, there's not too much you can do about it apart from hide it behind a well-designed, simple interface. But I do have 3 suggestions. So first, when you're writing software, when you're designing the architecture of the software, keep simplicity in mind. Keep this in mind. Software, well-written, good software should be the minimum complexity required to do the task effectively. I'll say that again. The minimum complexity required to do the task effectively. So don't make it any more complicated. Think before you add any extra switch or configurable option or whatever, because one switch has 2 settings. 2 switches has 4. 8 switches has 256 possible combinations. 16 switches has 65,000. And if you have 32 switches in a row, you're starting to get to airplane cockpit level complexity. Just 32 switches in a row, 4 billion possible combinations. So complexity can run away from you very quickly. Think before you add all these complicated additional options. If you feel that the power users still need the extra configurability, then suggestion number 2, make the default good. Now, this is an area of software development that fortunately has improved over the years. It used to be so many programs, especially the open source ones, you would have to mess with configuration files for a while in order to get it to perform well, because the default was horrible, if the default even existed in the first place. But yes, if you add the additional complexity, make the default good. And for that matter, inform the user of what's happening. Right? The camera app here telling me that it doesn't have permission to use my webcam when other software can use my webcam just fine. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be able to record this right now. Right? That's not a very useful error message. Something else is up that it's not saying. Now, then there's the third thing. Being a creative pursuit, programming, a bit like writing a book, your first draft's not going to be that good. It's the editing that really makes things great. So third suggestion, factor in time for refactoring, it's called. That's rewriting things to make them simpler, better, and more reliable. Now, I realize this might put you on a warpath with management who want you to ship fast, ship often and cheaply. But as a matter of good engineering, you need to do the refactoring. Like the person writing the book, then they need to do their editing. You need to do yours as well. And if management can't handle that idea, my suggestion would be increase your estimate of how long things take so that you have additional time to rework things to get the complexity back down. Because it needs to be done. Here's what if you have management like that, what they don't know is that if you keep on bolting thing on top of thing, right? You've got the software, you don't have time to simplify this. You just bolt another thing on top, and then you bolt another thing on top because you need this and then that, and then requirements change, so you bolt another thing over here. Sooner or later, you end up with this incredibly complex spaghetti code that's causing these crazy bugs that the users are complaining about that are very hard to track down and fix. And the amount of time it takes to create any improvements or do any maintenance on the software explodes. And you may have encountered software projects like this where their release schedule starts pulling out further and further. The time between releases increases over time. And it's probably because they're hitting that point where the code is becoming unmaintainable. You don't want to get to that point. So yes, factor in time for refactoring. Now, I'm sure other people have other suggestions on how to keep the code simple. or to simplify code that has gotten overly complex? If you do, please share it with us. These are my 3 suggestions for now. I will see you next time.